Привет, друзья! G'day, guys. Welcome to another Soviet lens review. Today, we're going to be uncovering the mystery behind the Mir 1 Sh. Why is it called Sh? And is it better or worse than the standard Mir 1 V? So, let's get into it. Okay, so starting off with a little bit of history about the lens. The Mir 1 in general was a Soviet lens designed after the Carl Zeiss Jena Flectagon lens with a 6 glass element in 5 group optical design, and it was a really good design. You know, the Flectagon has stood the test of time, and the Mir 1, when the Soviets produced their original version, which was in the M39 mount, actually won a prize at the World Fair in Brussels in 1958 for essentially being a great lens. And we do see that general trend continued as to, you know, the Soviets did make a lot of kind of Carl Zeiss copies early on, maybe refactored their mathematical or optical design to work with Soviet manufactured glass, but overall that was really how a lot of modern Soviet lenses got their start. But this is not the Mir 1. This is the Mir 1 Sh, and we want to know essentially what makes it different, because when I was looking up this lens, there's a lot of conjecture on online forums about, you know, why this lens was named Mir 1 Sh with a Sh on the end instead of V. And some people said that, it was the best copies of the Mir 1 V that were given to party members. Some people said that, it just had some different, really high quality glass into it. There's some people that said, it was a school version because Sh, could be the first letter of the word shkolnik or shkoli in Russian for school. But, none of it was really conclusive. So what I did to find out why this lens was called the Mir 1 Sh and what differentiates it is I actually ended up purchasing a copy of the lens's original handbook here, or manual, I guess, that came with the lens. And not to my surprise, but on the very first page, you can actually see why this lens is the Mir 1 Sh. It has it in small print down the bottom, and the translation goes, the Mir 1 Sh has a reduced resolution compared to the lens Mir 1 V. So I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest, when I read that down the bottom of the manual there, because I was kind of expecting, maybe something a little bit more interesting, but no, in effect, the Mir 1 Sh is a budget copy of the Mir 1 V. That's effectively all there is to it. What you can actually see in terms of technical characteristics is the resolution power of the Mir 1 Sh. So, to give you some perspective, the Mir 1 V had a resolution power of 45 lines per millimeter squared in the center of the frame and 23 on the edges of the frame. The Mir 1 V has a resolution power of half that. Less than half that, 23 millimeters in the center of the frame and 10 millimeters lines per millimeter in the corners of the frame. So really, this lens is less than half as sharp as the Mir 1 V. And it shows. Before we get into some photos, a quick run through of some technical characteristics. So it is a 37.4 millimeter focal length, not quite 35, not quite 40, and it does have an aperture that goes from f2.8 all the way through to f16, and a preset aperture kind of mechanism here. It has an M42 mount, so I just adapt it using an M42 to Nikon Z adapter on my Nikon Z6. And its front filter thread is 49 millimeters, so not a very common front filter thread. The Mir 1 Sh was made in the VOMZ plant, and the Mir 1s, essentially, lots of different copies were made at different plants all over the Soviet Union, since it was a lens that, again, it was in production from the 50s right through to this copy here was made in 1990. So it was a real impressive lens design that stood the test of time that the guys at Carl Zeiss Jena came up with. It does have a 270 degree focus ring rotation, so it can get quite precise focus wise, and that's the same between the Mir 1 Sh and the Mir 1V. On to ergonomics. It is a Soviet lens, which means it is made of metal and glass, and it just feels fantastic in your hand, as almost all Soviet lenses do. It's not too heavy. It just feels like it's well built. It feels like it's going to last for a while. Unfortunately, that is where the Mir 1 Sh stops being ergonomic and nice, because it's got some issues. The aperture preset mechanism here, it's not very nice to use, because what you'll do while you're trying to focus the lens is you'll accidentally knock the aperture preset ring and just sort of change the aperture a little bit, because it's very easy to do so. That's not very nice. The aperture preset mechanism as well itself is just not nice enough to warrant using on modern cameras either. And then you've got the focus ring, which, although smooth and with a very large rotation, it is in a very bad spot on the lens. It's right at the back of the lens. It's not a very thick focus ring either, which means that you're going to be struggling to kind of just touch that without touching the aperture ring. So I think I've got to give the Mir 1 Sh very low points in terms of actual ergonomics and usability. It's one of my least favorite Soviet lenses to use, and that's also because the minimum focusing distance, it's 0.7 meters, 70 centimeters for, in effect, a 35mm lens. Now, I come from the Mir 24M, which has a minimum focusing distance of around about 30 centimeters. And going from that to 70 is just a pain, because you can't get anything close up. You can't get, the sort of bokeh that you want to get. Even with an aperture of f2.8, you're not going to get that much bokeh in your shots. So, yeah, I think ergonomics-wise, this lens really does fall down. In terms of photo characteristics, though, the Mir does pick up a little bit. It is a very neutral lens in terms of the colors that it produces. They're going to be very gradable. They're going to look a little bit vintage, a little bit natural. The skin tones are quite nice. But you could say that about a lot of Soviet lenses, and I would say that the Mir 1 Sh, it doesn't stand out in terms of the colors it produces. They're fairly run-of-the-mill for what else was going on at that time. Sharpness-wise, I will show a few sharpness tests here, and you can see that, yes, stopping it down does technically increase the resolution, but overall, it's just not a sharp lens. It doesn't matter if you stop it down to f5.6, it's really not going to be much sharper, or even f11, because the resolving power is just so low. It is, it is a lens that maybe if we still had 3 megapixel cameras, it might be perfect for that. And unfortunately, that is by design. It was designed as a budget lens with cheaper glass, so they could, effectively make it more affordable. And as a result of that, it's got a lower resolution. Simple as that. Now, I could talk about other factors like, longitudinal chromatic aberration, LOCA, which is quite low on this lens. You don't see too much chromatic aberration. It's certainly not egregious. The bokeh on the lens also is worth mentioning. It's quite nice. It's not, it's not too distracting. I would say bokeh is one of the lens's better features. But as you can tell, I'm really not a big fan of the Mir 1 Sh. It is a lens that was made in 1990 as the budget version of a lens that was, being made in the 50s. So, it really is a lens half as good as a lens that was being produced in the 1950s, at least the Sh variant. So there is no way that I can recommend that you purchase this lens unless you really just want to see what a soft lens looks like. You can be the judge for yourself. Maybe there's a few, artistic, maybe black and white film emulation style shots where, you might feel as though the lens is sharp enough to achieve that sort of a look. But in general photography, I personally don't think that I'm going to be picking up the Mir 1 Sh and using it maybe ever again, maybe until I get a Mir 1V, until I can actually put them both to the test. But there you go. So guys, I don't really have too much else to say, aside from I really can't recommend you buying the Mir 1Sh. Maybe the Mir 1V, but honestly, if you're looking for a Soviet 35mm, go for the Mir 24M or the Mir 24N. It is just such a nicer lens than this to use and shows up so much nicer on modern cameras. Yeah, I think that just about sums it up. So, thanks for watching, guys. Remember, throw us a like, throw us a comment, a subscribe, all of that good stuff. And until the next time on Soviet Lens Reviews, I'll see you then.